Growth is always expansion. So what that means is adding on. We're adding on. We're adding on. To use what Allen talks about so often, I love his phrasing about this, that we're always looking for new possibilities. When we have new possibilities, when we have new ways of doing things and we practice them, we will tend to choose the better options. All I'm asking people to do is to say, use that as a reminder. It's a little peg list thing. I'm going to use that as a reminder to go seeking an alternate way of thinking.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Becoming aware of your intrapersonal spare time, not interpersonal, but intrapersonal spare time. Let's see how it makes sense to me today. It's a very short piece. Let's consider a different kind of spare time, time that is ours, like it or not, every moment of our waking lives. The time in which we are thinking, feeling, experiencing what it is like to be who we are. Even describing that can seem ominous and, even for me, a bit frightening. Most of us have not previously considered applying principles of time management to what is going on in our intrapersonal process. But it is from this automatic process that our experience of life takes shape. And in the midst of so much of our life that happens beyond our sphere of influence, things we don't control, how we manage our intrapersonal time is ultimately up to us. You know, that's one thing in the serenity prayer. That's one of the things we always have control of. Intrapersonal time management falls in the serenity prayer short list of things we can change. We can change how we use our time internally. So that's what I had been thinking about when I wrote this, and I think I'm talking about the discipline that it takes to be in a practice of emotional sobriety. I mean, it's not just a daily practice; it's a constant practice. It's like and we're not gonna, I'm not going to be successful at constantly, always, every day, paying attention to every little moment. But what I have discovered is over time, I have been able to interrupt my negative thinking, my self-condemning thinking enough to where that's no longer the natural practice. It's no longer natural for me to, on most days, I should say, it's no longer natural for me to just beat the crap out of myself. And certainly not natural for me to beat the crap out of myself and just buy it as the truth. Because that's what happens when we're unconscious to that stuff. We have these horrible negative thoughts about ourselves, and I have a client who refers to her self-condemnation, which I think is a beautiful metaphor for it, as the choir. It's not just one, not just one guy. I always say this is, it's a choir singing, 4-part harmony.
Yeah, it's got some pipes on it.
That's exactly right. And it's like, I love the image because that's so, it's so powerful, and so it can be so overwhelming, and so have such it's certainly an attention grabber. But the idea, with practice, and practice is not getting rid of the choir or the individual condemner. It's that second thought. I always say the short version of this work is first thought, second thought. First thought's not me, second thought is me. And second, so if a first reflex is to think something condemning or negative, my next move is simply to decide whether I'm agreeing or disagreeing with it. It's like, and then once there, if I disagree, hopefully, what do I think? What do I think instead? And it's like, and it's not, like some people oversimplify some of this stuff in terms of, if you have a condemning thought, what you're supposed to say is, I am a wonderful person, and I'm completely lovable, and it's like, I don't know if that works or not. It's almost like that almost takes us to the parody of Stuart Smalley, Al Franken's character. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, enough and doggone it, people like me. It's like, nice enough to say those things, but it's like, it doesn't ring true for me. But the idea that, and we hear this a lot in our Thursday support group a lot of times, is people using the term, the phrase, I'm a work in progress. That's the better way. I think for me anyway, to be able to say I'm a work in progress and move on from there.
Well, the goal is, it sort of is to be attentive and present in every moment, and with the recognition that we're likely not going to get there.
Right. Well, you mentioned breath counting meditation in a conversation we had recently. It's it's the same as that. It's like, if we're gonna sit here and do breath meditation and count to 10, neither of us is going to get to 10. And if one of us says we did, we're lying. It's like,
well, I'll give you
the mind will not do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just yesterday, I was late in getting to the car to drive my girlfriend to a job. And I was similarly late when she had a freelance job in Los Angeles about a month ago. And, it was 10 to 15 minutes late. And the last time that I fucked up and I was late getting us out the door, I managed to hold back the baying dogs in my brain that wanted me to well, you were late X and Y times, so I should be beyond reproach for not managing my time.
You're talking about the defenses. Your defenses wanted to come up and explain to her why you should be let off on this one.
Right. Why why actually I did nothing wrong, and I shouldn't have to feel bad about myself.
I'm simply balancing the scales here, my friend.
Yeah.
It's like
So I didn't do that last time. I did do it this time, but it was not because it was just so I was just so much more acutely aware of her missteps with time management in the past. It was because I felt worse about myself having done it the second time now. Literally made the same mistake twice. We always try to make different mistakes, but I was making the same mistake, and I just did not want to sit with that guilt and that feeling of having bungled the schedule. And anyway, I did that. She reacted to my shenanigans pretty maturely, and then I, within minutes, I came around to an apology, and we ended up working it out, and we got into town and did what we needed to do just in time. I lost the reins for a little bit there. I was not being emotionally sober, but I was able to snap back.
Right. What you're doing, I mean, and this is one of the things that I find very, very important to help people see is, you measure, because we're not going to move from wherever we are to perfection ever. We need to think in terms of, if we're thinking about this intrapersonal management, we're talking about time management initially, but now we're just talking about just how we manage what does it mean to have an intrapersonal emotional sobriety practice. It's like, well, there's a measure of recovery there in terms of response time. It's like, how long did it used to take me to do what you're describing? It's like, well, initially I never did it. I never got it done at all. I just kept supporting my defenses, and I just kept repeating the same, like you said, repeating the same thing again. It's like, so the idea is then there comes a time when you can make that turnaround that you're describing in a week. And you come back and you say, and you have the guts to come back and say, last week, when we were doing this, and then you have you do it. And by the way, it's not like you don't ever, if you turn it around in 2 minutes, it doesn't mean you can't can't take a week the next time either. But ultimately, what we're saying here is when I say measure it, it's not really for the measurement's sake. It's for observation's sake. It's for awareness sake. It's like, I need to see that, first of all, you're holding yourself accountable to when you recognize that you're making a mistake. This is 10th step stuff in the 12 steps. It's like, when we're wrong, promptly admit it. It's like when you realize it, you say it. First we say it to ourselves, we get some clarity about that, and then you share it with your girlfriend. It's like, as mundane as that can be in the course of a day-to-day life, those are the building blocks of emotional sobriety, because it's about responsibility. That's what you're doing. You're taking responsibility.
If there's something that I'm grateful about recovery, unequivocally, it puts me in touch with the capacity of people to change.
Yes.
There's some debate about that's always raging, right? Like, how much can we adjust the fundamentals? Are we just stuck with this?
When you say that, we were comparing me through my whole process of this stuff, and you say, okay, well, with hindsight and with kind of a pan back view, leaps and bounds can be applicable, I think. However, leaps and bounds did not come about in leaps and bounds. That just makes me remember that old joke from my childhood that says, I'm muscle bound to get muscles one day. This is where I go to Bill Murray in a wonderful movie with Richard Dreyfuss. What About Bob? One of the big jokes in that is Richard Dreyfuss has written a book called Baby Steps. I remember
that.
And so Murray, as the client, of course, takes it quite literally and takes baby steps. But the truth is that the Baby Steps book is perfect. It's exactly what we're talking about. The way you get to leaps and bounds is baby steps. It's like you just do it again and again. It's repetition over and over and over and over again. It's I had a friend, my friend Jules Merriman, used to do workshops with me for eating disorders. She used to say to people, you have to be willing to do the boring part of recovery and of therapy. Is like, and that is the part where you find the things that work better and you do them over and over and over again. And this fits into the whole thing that we've talked about on the podcast before, is just what we know more about when you talk about ability to change, we know about brain plasticity. We know that neurologically we actually can change. So not only can we change, it's like by thinking differently and by behaving differently, we actually can change our biology. We change our brains. Now, to what degree? I mean, can we change it to the point where I'm not the same Thom that has always been here? No, I don't think so. But I don't want that, and even on a day where you might want that for yourself, I don't want that for you, because I like who you are. It's like, but we can change ourselves so that our basic, our sort of the automatic process. The reason we got how we got is basically we got installed with our choir or our individual condemning voice. And how does that work? It works through repetition. People sometimes who say and I'll introduce the idea of affirmation for somebody. And, that also brings up Stuart Smalley sometimes for some people, and they roll their eyes. I'm going like, no, I'm talking about affirmation in the most practical sense. The word affirm means to make firm. It doesn't mean say something positive to yourself, So what I say to people who say, I don't believe in affirmations, would say mean they don't believe they work, is I think of the most negative thought you have about yourself and how many times you've had it, and tell me how well affirmations work. We are the product of our affirmations. What we're doing with this process is changing them, but not just changing the thought. You and I are talking about changing the behavior. It's like, and sometimes changing the behavior. Very often, I'll abandon our gender here for a second and just say, I know this about men. We can let some women tell us about this. Well, ask Maddie to tell you about how it works for women. But changing behavior for men very often starts with being aware of what we used to do and keeping our mouths shut when we
Yes.
when we ordinarily would say something. It's like it can be so powerful. Now I'm sure we don't have a total corner on the market as men, but it's like I just know that about myself. I know that about other guys. That I mean, it's how often I'm working with men of just saying like, here's what you do when you think that. You don't say it. Now it doesn't mean just stop there. It means you're going to go through a process of changing that thinking. But before you do that, there's just some things. And I'm not talking about keeping secrets. I'm not talking about keeping things back. I'm just simply, not sticking your foot out there to trip somebody when that's what you've been doing over and over and over again.
Hmm.
Stop being mean. Even if you're saying, oh, well, I didn't know that was mean. Well, what I'll say to the client sometimes is, well, I'm telling you now that it's not nice, at least, and it's probably mean. And so now so stop doing it. Now, again, easier, and then that's when people say easier said than done. And I say, duh. Yeah, everything about this is easier said than done. It's like anytime we hear ourselves having that come up as an excuse, it means we're kind of out of excuses.
Yeah.
Well, that's easier said than done. It's like, okay, so you
Well,
got to work at it.
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that it's easy, but I think that changing behavior to change thoughts, to me, there's a simplicity to that I find appealing, because
Mm-hmm,
my thoughts anyway are just like this
mm-hmm,
nest of complication, and I really,
mm-hmm,
and I think that's like the space that I was in when I was in active addiction was, I was just completely in my head, and I felt totally
mm-hmm.
isolated just in my experience of day-to-day life. And
Right.
the extent to which I've been able to adopt a series of practices and behaviors, and to start, I still have kind of a toxic nest in my head
Mm-hmm.
from time to
Sure.
time. But I one way that I've been able to medicate that is getting a plan together of the day to day, and which changes over time, and then by starting with the behavior, then working my way back, I can often kind of do some mental cleanup,
Yes.
and that gives me hope. I mean, and that gives me hope for others as well. Is that, like, you don't need to figure it out mentally
Right.
necessarily, or you will get there in your own time. But there's definitely a series of practices that you could do to get the ball rolling, that can kind of like assist in that navigation.
I'm working with a client right now who has a history of OCD, a pretty classic diagnosable OCD, where it's and he tends to attach. I use a metaphor that my wife gave to me one time for some of my I don't think I'm diagnosable as OCD, but I can pretty personality wise, I can be pretty much like that. And she would say about some anxiety that I would have, is she said, like, you have like these tentacles coming out of your brain, and there's suction cups on the end of the tentacles, and they just they just seem to want to attach to something, and once they're attached to something, they just stay stuck there. And it's like, and this kind of works for this fellow that I'm working with, and he has a lot of really fear-based things about that are based on his own low self-esteem, on his own fear of not deserving somebody to be in a relationship with and stuff. But it comes out as suspicion about her behavior. And so he becomes this sort of, Sherlock Holmes investigator, trying to be sure that she's telling him the truth in this stuff. And you can imagine how tiresome that becomes. And he's done a beautiful job of understanding that and seeing that and stopping the behavior so that he's not doing that when he's with his girlfriend. But one of the things we started talking about very recently was the idea is that's still not sobriety. He still has to take it, because what's happening is he's, when I said if being suspicious is analogous to picking up the drink, is what I'm thinking. I said, you're not drinking around her now. That's a good thing. But when she's not around, you're still drunk, because he's still entertaining those thoughts. It's like he's not making the change. And what you're talking about is a very important aspect of it. And I appreciate the way you said it, because it's going to be helpful to me in talking with him. Is the idea is what you do is you change those behaviors. And then you understand that your job is to pay attention to how things are different when the behavior changes. Let me sure I got this right with you. It's like you see that things interpersonally are different when you change the behavior. In this case, not saying things you would say, or maybe saying something you wouldn't have said in the past. But and then with that information, you begin the process of questioning and ultimately changing your own thought process.
Yes, and it also has to do with the way that you evaluate yourself. If you're centering your identity entirely around your thoughts rather than your actions in the physical world, I just feel like you can kind of get lost in, like, you are not your thoughts. You are not the voice in your head. You're the one listening to the voice in your head. You've got to center. At least it's been my project to just try and center my identity more around, well, yeah, I mean, I just thought this really fucked up thing, or or I feel very guilty about this thought I had, but what if I were to instead put some energy into this or that? Makes me feel better about myself.
Oh, you're okay. Well, so, and let me be sure I get this right, and correct me if I'm not hearing you right. It's like, so in that way, the correction is both thought and behavior.
Yeah,
because one of the things is, first of all, what you're describing is, the differentiation between yourself and your thoughts, which is, I am not my thoughts. I am in relationship with my thoughts. It's like, that alone is miraculous to be able to practice to the point of getting that idea that basically my job is sitting here in the control booth of my mind. Is my job is to pay attention to thoughts that come through and decide what I want to do with them. And just because the thoughts, since some thoughts tend to come with more, they just speak with more authority. A lot of times the negative thoughts do this. It's one of those weird deals that seems to be, well, it seems to mirror the interpersonal world, is that basically assholes tend to be will give you their opinions unsolicited. Assholes will tend to be louder, more obnoxious, more forceful, and wise people will tend to lay back, wait till you ask for some information or some input, and they're not going to try to shove anything down your throat. I think our own intrapersonal process is the same way. One of the most important things to do at a time like what you're describing to me is what I tell people is, since you're not going to get rid of that toxic nest. See, when you said, I think that's an important point I always want our listeners to hear. It's like, we're not getting rid of anything. It's like, it's not personal to the toxic nest. We're always growth is expansion. Think about how you just think about growth. Growth is always expansion. So what that means is adding on. We're adding on. To use what Allen talks about so often, I love his phrasing about this, that we're always looking for new possibilities. When we have new possibilities, when we have new ways of doing things and we practice them, we will tend to choose the better options. I actually have a name for that too. It's called, I name everything, by the way, in case you haven't noticed. It's springboard. I call it springboard technique. So that how would you ask the wonderful question, the magnet question, how would I be different if every time I heard a familiar negative thought, I immediately went looking for an alternate positive way of framing that? And the answer to the question was, can be different in specific ways, but in general ways, how would I be different? I would be better. Just like we're not talking about our job in the people helping business is not just to make people feel better, but to be better. The wise voice is not going to say nice things to us that are not true.
Are you pretty good with springboard these days, or is that something you kind of worked into your practice that helps with?
Yeah, it's kind of automatic, I think, in a lot of ways, but when it's not, it's like you do it manually. It's like, I think that, and I think the way that I hadn't thought about it until you asked that question this way, but I think the way I would say it's pretty automatic is because I tend to go to the more positive way, or the more productive way. Really, it's not so much positive as productive way of thinking about things pretty automatically. And my guess is that if I look at it at the unconscious, I'm probably springboarding more than I'm actually consciously aware of nowadays. But to begin with, you do it consciously, you do it manually. It's like, okay, in journaling, you write down the toxic thought that repetition is a problem. And then on the other column, you write down, what is just, and here's the challenge. Don't make it up. Just listen. Just ask yourself, ask that wiser part of yourself. Ask, very often around here, we call it the recovery voice, but it could be the wise voice. Can we call it anything you want? But what is that? What does the wisdom voice say to me? And then just sit quietly and listen. It's like, you may be uncomfortable about writing it down because, you may be uncomfortable with the thought of it. It's like, well, a lot of times we're uncomfortable when we start having thoughts that are better and that are smarter and that are wiser. But put it down, see what it says. It's like, my guess is my belief is most people have more access to the wisdom inside themselves than they let themselves admit to themselves.
What's crazy is when the wisdom voice is talking to me, and I could feel the mechanism of the resistance to that voice, and I can literally see it. And it's the wisdom voice is literally trying to pour medicine up to my lips. But and I guess in my case it would be the ego. It would just be whatever the thing is, and it's killing me. It's not protecting me, but it is it's a steel wall that it's throwing up.
No, Patrick, this is kind of maybe the culmination of this conversation, because how would I be different if I were to simply do what my wisdom voice says every day? No questions asked. Just do what it says. That's it. That brings up so much resistance in me to say it. It's like it's improvement, it's progress, just that I can say it without stuttering when I say it to you right now. But I feel it in my chest. It's like, and it makes, and I know that ultimately we all need to make sense. But at this point, I can honestly say it doesn't make sense to me, because I know the answer would be, for one thing, I would get this thing done, But it's beginning to bring up things to me that are very, very interesting, and I think ought to be very productive about what my own expectations, what my own beliefs about myself. It's beyond just the old easy part, or not easy part, but the simple part where it's just like, I just thought I was a piece of shit that didn't deserve anything. I don't believe that anymore. But but there are some things I'm not ready to believe about what I can do.
Yeah.
What I'm capable of doing. And it's coming out through this idea where I am saying, and your picture of is standing there with the medicine ready to give the medicine. And it's like, but the thing is, I gave a pill to my cat just before we came on the air. It's like I can stick, I stick that pill down that cat's throat. It's like, by the way, if anybody needs advice on how to give a cat a pill, you have to put your hand into the stomach of the cat. That's how deep you have to go to do that.
I've never been good at that. They hate, they will not do that.
They will bite you. But the other thing is, if you get your hand far enough back in there, their molars are not going to be able to hurt you, because those front teeth are the ones that are going to hurt you. So by the way, there's a little extra stuff, but our wisdom self will not do that to us. Okay. So the thing is, I have to take the pill from the wisdom, and put it in my mouth and swallow it myself. And I'm working on it. But it's that I think if we do nothing else today in this conversation, but just say, hey, everybody, just pay attention to your own resistance to the wisdom voice. Check with your wisdom voice every day. Check with your recovery voice. What is it telling you to do? Just wake up in the morning with a notepad by your bed and say, okay, give me some guidance for the day, and write down what that recovery voice. My experience with that is the recovery voice is much less verbose than I am, and most people. It's like, it's pretty short, pretty concise, pretty straight ahead. Here's the thing to do. And the cool part about that wisdom voice, the other way you can identify it, is it won't judge you when you don't do it.
Yeah.
Right? Is that true for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is all just making me think about how the openness that being genuinely consistently emotionally sober requires is
Yeah.
scary, because it would mean acceptance and release of just so many things that,
Yes.
this kind of matrix for living that we've had our whole lives. And in my case yesterday, mundane though it may be, apologizing for being late and accepting my failure in that regard. It's a challenge to my perfection. It's a challenge to
Yep.
my
Yep.
sense of good guyness. And
Yeah.
take that and just multiply it. And that's what the resistance is, I guess.
Well, that's it. And it's and as always, tell me if yours is different than mine, but my, the simplicity with which the voice, that wisdom voice speaks, and the principles that we need to be practicing. It's like, one of the things about that is, and I was thinking about that, experiencing that this morning, is just dealing with, something we've in recovery, we live with all the time, is the concept of one day at a time. One day at a time. Sure. It's like it's a great concept. What is it? Live in the moment, go to more Buddhist things of just live in the moment, just be in this moment. It's like, it's taken me this long to get to the place where I realize that's not a concept. That's only a practice, and the truth is, if I'm sitting there eating my breakfast, which is when I had this experience this morning, and I realize I'm enjoying eating this bagel, having my coffee, and reading little Alan Watts this morning. Being fully present in the moment means you're sitting where you're sitting, I'm sitting where I'm sitting. We're each in a conversation with someone we care about and love, and that we enjoy talking about. And I think that you share this experience. I'll speak for myself that always a conversation that we have, I benefit from it. I always benefit from enjoying it, but I usually benefit from it intellectually as well, because I learned something about myself, or about you, or both. And in this moment, that's all there is. You're sitting there. I don't know where your cats are, but my cat's right to my right. It's like, but it's like
my right as well. Yeah.
Okay.
They're just off screen.
Yeah, mine's right down here, standing next to me. It's like, and so I'm just sitting there quietly for a minute, going like, that's it. This is the entire universe. What I'll say to a client in a time like this is, isn't it fascinating that neither of us, barring physical pain, okay, we'll give that exception, barring physical pain, and I'm in none right now. Are you?
I'm in none.
Okay. Barring physical pain, we have absolutely no problems in the world, anywhere in the universe, either one of us. It takes us that long to go to the past or the future to get them, but it's like, we don't have any. We're fine.
I almost never think that, or I almost never recognize that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's very profound.
But but see, that's the center point. I kind of get chills even when I say that. I go like that. That's the place we're coming from in this moment. We are fine. And it's like, and then, and then the moment I say that, I can hear, more than choirs. If I want to listen to them, there's all kinds of other people who want to talk afterwards. But I think part of emotional sobriety is just saying, no, I don't really need to do that. I don't need to open the floodgates. I just want to sit here and be here with my friend Patrick. And in our case, with anyone who's listening in.
I think that's a lovely place to leave it.
Okay.
Tend your life, tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. with glass in hand and children on one knee. Bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.